Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of VICast. Today with me we have Dallon.
Yep, I'm back in this program, and today we'll be covering a couple of things. So it's more like a continuation of the previous episode that we did.
Yes, so the previous episode we actually discussed and went through the process of setting up a brand new Apple mobile device fresh out of the box. So in that case we actually did it on an iPad. Today is a continuation. We'll be looking at the same iPad and we'll be looking at how we can configure some of the settings, how we can set it up such that it's more to your liking, more personalized to your use case.
Yep, so let's begin. I think, Hong Sen, we should kind of start off with talking a little bit about the layout of things so that our clients here, for those who are new to the iOS ecosystem, at least it's not like a shock factor for them.
Yes, for sure. So let's go through a brief introduction of the user interface of iOS. Just a quick disclaimer, iOS is the mobile operating system that you find pre-installed on your Apple device. On an iPad, it's called iPad OS, but basically the layout is pretty much the same. So the terminology is the same. There are little differences within both platforms, but they are virtually like 95%, 99% the same thing, except for some visual differences here and there.
Okay, so I'm holding the iPad now.
So of course now the iPad is locked. Firstly, you want to wake the iPad up. Last time we actually went through a very quick description of the different buttons on your Apple device. So a quick recap, you have your sleep wake button or the power button, and then you have your volume buttons as well.
Okay, I'll press the power button.
2:29 p.m.
So it's reading out the time. Now where you will be placed is on the lock screen.
Oh, it's just screen locked again. So
2:29.
let's just swipe around the lock screen. I'm just going to use the gesture that we commonly use, the one finger flick to the right gesture.
Tuesday, the 14th of June. Press home to open. Page 1 of 2. Adjustable.
So that's all it has, the time, the date, and it also has this little instruction
2. Press home to open.
that says press home to open, and it says page 1 of 2. So it means we can use the 3-finger swipe gesture to go to the next page.
Bottom and center. 2:30 camera. Take picture. 0 people.
This will then bring us to the camera page. It's a quick way to bring out your camera for some low vision users. It
Tilt
works
right.
the same way for both your iPhone and your iPad. Okay, so to unlock the iPad, the lock on screen,
EPM.
as it says, press the home button.
FaceTime.
So what happens is that after the iPad is unlocked, you'll be placed on the home screen of the iPad itself, and then it will read out the first app, which is FaceTime. Typically it's FaceTime. Of course, if let's say you have rearranged your home screen a different layout, then it might vary a little bit. But anyway, the idea here is that when you unlock your iPad, it's going to be where you left off. So in this case, the device was freshly started up. So yes, we are on the home screen.
FaceTime.
Okay, FaceTime is the first app, and then you have other apps on this home screen. So there's a grid here of about
There are about 6 icons, I guess.
6 icons across, and
I don't know what's the maximum for this. Probably 6 by 5. Around there. So if you fill up the entire home screen, it will give you like a 6 by 5 kind of thing. It depends on how big your iPad is.
this is a
Like a-
9.7-inch iPad. Sorry, 10.2-inch iPad. Sorry, this is a new
so
size.
there are like the iPad Pros that are bigger, right? Are they? Are
Yeah,
they?
but I don't think they fit more icons.
The 12 point something inch one.
So depending on the size of your display, of course, the grid might be a little bit different. But the idea is that it's multiple rows of icons on this home screen. So home screen is, as the name implies, is where you start off. When you start your device fresh, this is where you will be placed at, the home screen. The home screen is where all your apps are placed. And if you were to just navigate to the next page, so because the home screen itself will be comprised of multiple pages. The first page is, well, obviously the first page, and that's where usually it's a default page. It's called home.
Yes, all the Apple pre-installed app, like, settings, FaceTime, maybe apps like books or podcasts, right? These are the pre-installed apps, and most of the time they are usually on the home screen, which
Yep.
is like the first page.
Correct. So it is also good to mention that on an iPhone, your layout of apps will be a little bit different, not just in terms of the number of apps on the screen, but
Screen
also the
dim.
types of apps that you see. Right now we are on the first page of the home screen, so if we want to go to the next page, we would do a 3-finger swipe from right to left.
Page 2 of 2. Photo booth.
And then voiceover will announce what is the current page number. So page 2 of 2. If you have more than 2 pages, then of course it will say something like page 2 of 3, page 2 of 5, so on and so forth. So again, to repeat, 3-finger swipe is to scroll throughout the interface of iOS with voiceover. So 3-finger swipe from right to left will go to the next page. 3-finger swipe from left to right will go to the previous page.
Home. Page 1 of 2.
Okay.
FaceTime.
Okay, now we are back on the first page of the home screen. If we were to do a 3-finger swipe down, we will bring out something called Spotlight.
Spotlight. Top text field. Is editing.
Just for those who are not sure what Spotlight is basically a place where it allows you to kind of quickly search up certain things, quickly go to certain apps. At least that's what I mainly use it for lah.
In short, it's a search function. So you can search for apps, you can search for information online. That's what Spotlight is for. We won't go too much into it right now, but basically to just describe it, on the Spotlight page itself, once this is open, you will have the keyboard at the bottom of the screen. So this is where you can type your search terms. At the top of the screen, you would be able to find your results of what you searched for. Some maybe suggested search terms, maybe some of the results. So depending on what kind of terms you searched for. For instance, if you search for an app, if you type in maybe part of the app name, they will give you suggestions. So if you type, for example, settings, you have to type SET, they may just show you the settings app there. If you say something like Telegram, you type TELE, maybe it will suggest Telegram. So on and so forth. But if you were to ask more direct questions like say, what is $1 United States in Singapore dollars, they may just give you the results directly. Okay, so that's how Spotlight works. Moving on. I have just pressed the home button to return to the home screen. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the app switcher. Let's say you have opened some apps on your iDevice. How do you then see what is currently open, or how do you switch between apps that have been opened already? So this is where we use the app switcher. As the name implies, app switcher means it's the screen where you can switch apps and it shows you all the currently open apps. There are 2 ways to do this. So if you are using a new iPhone, the one with the swipe gesture, you will do a swipe up from the bottom edge of the screen. Okay, so I should have mentioned that if you are returning to the home screen on a newer iPhone or iPad, you don't have the home button. I've been talking about the home button. But if you guys remember from our previous episode, we mentioned that some of these devices, they don't have the home button anymore. So what you do here is that at the bottom edge, if you just swipe up, you can hear this. Okay, so let me just silence that. Okay, so what you hear is this. Let's hear that again. I'll touch the bottom edge of my device, on my screen, then I'll swipe out.
Home.
Okay, so it says home. Now I'm on the home screen. Now, to go to the app switcher, you will basically swipe up a little bit further. So when you are doing this home gesture, you are swiping up basically halfway. So it's only about 2 inches up from the bottom edge of the screen. Okay, home. If I were to
Home.
continue to swipe some more.
Lift for app switcher. App switcher has no items.
Okay, there's currently nothing in the app switcher. We will try this again very soon after I have managed to open an app. So what happens here is that this is basically a 2-stage sort of gesture. When you swipe up through the halfway mark of the gesture, you get the home screen. If you swipe a full swipe, which is maybe about like 7 cm or so, if you're talking about a device, of course different phones will be a bit different, but basically when you hear the second click,
app switcher has no item.
Okay, that is the app switcher. You'll also feel your vibration on your iPhone as well.
Do make sure when you do the gesture, your fingers are still on the screen itself. When you touch the bottom, when you swipe up, make sure your fingers are still on the screen. When you hear the right tone that you want, or when you reach the halfway mark for home, then you lift your finger. So do make sure that it has to be a full complete kind of gesture.
Yep, so you must be pretty smooth. You can't just like lift your finger up or just do a very erratic one. The speed is something that you need to kind of just play around with it to figure out what works well for you. It doesn't need to be super fast or super slow. As long as there's some consistency there and you feel comfortable with it, it works pretty well. Okay, so there's the app switcher. I'll just quickly show you this. Okay.
FaceTime.
Okay, let's say I open FaceTime.
FaceTime.
Okay, so I'm using FaceTime and done with FaceTime now. Let's open another app.
Face TV. Stocks. Measure. Settings.
Okay, say settings.
Settings.
Okay, so now I'm in the settings app. Now let's go back to home. Again, two methods. One is press the home button.
Set.
Okay, that's the fastest way. If not, do a finger swipe up.
Home. FaceTime.
Now, I want to mention, because we talk about the app switcher, we talk about the gesture-based way, but if your iPhone or iPad has a home button, what you do is you press the home button 2 times.
Rapidly. Yeah.
App switcher. Setting. Active.
And this is where you have your
Swipe up with 3 finger. App 1 of 2.
app switcher. So now we're on app switcher now. Okay. If I were to just do a 1 finger flick,
FaceTime. Active. Settings. Active.
so these are the apps I opened just now.
Dock. Messages.
And at the bottom of the screen is a dock. So let's say I was from settings, I want to just quickly drop by FaceTime again.
FaceTime.
Just double tap.
You can FaceTime.
And then now I'm back in FaceTime. And if I want to go back to my app switcher to switch back to settings, again, either
App switch.
2 finger rapidly pressed on the home button. So double press basically.
Dock. FaceTime. Settings.
Settings.
Dictionary.
I'm going to repeat the gesture one more time. Okay.
App switch.
First click is to tell you that you triggered the gesture. Second click is for home. The third click is where you lift your finger to get into the app switcher. Okay, so enough of the gestures for this part. Now, the next part of the interface that we would like to share about is the control center and notification center of iOS. In summary, control center is basically where you can control some aspects of your device. So we are talking about, say switching on
Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or airplane mode. You can even add like more quick shortcut stuff there.
Yep.
And then there's where you can adjust like your brightness, your volume, or
some of your media playback.
It's like a quick shortcut area for most items that you will use, or you may use frequently.
Yep. The notification center is, as the name implies, is where you will see the notifications of your device. So when we talk about notifications, each app that you install on your iPad, iPhone, or even just iOS itself will display notifications to notify you of things. Maybe it's a software update, maybe if someone sent you a WhatsApp message, you receive a new email, some YouTube channel uploaded a new video. So this will all be considered as notifications, and you can find all these notifications in the notification center. When you receive a new notification, you typically will hear a tone and you'll see a banner going across the top of the screen to tell you what has just came in. So let's say you are using the device right then, you can just touch that top edge of the screen to hear what is new. Okay? If not, let's say you just return back to your device after a period of time and you want to check what are the notifications that you have received throughout the day, you can go to the notification center. Basically, the notification center is where all your notifications will be accumulated. So how do you go to the notification center? So this is another set of gestures, which actually is related to control center as well, because it's basically a reverse of the home/app switcher gestures, but except now you do it from the top edge of the screen. So we'll take a look at both of the gestures now. First, how do we get the control center to make some changes to the device, turn on off Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, airplane mode, so on and so forth. And then we'll take a look at opening the notification center.
So there's also 2 ways of doing it. One is that 2-state gesture thing, and the other one is for older phones, which does not have the 2-state gesture in it. Right. So
Okay.
I'll show the 2-state gesture one because it's something that we have talked about already. So same thing, instead of finding the bottom edge of your device, now you'll find the top edge of your device. Okay, so notice when I place my finger down around that it makes it sound.
Actions available.
Okay, so if I were to do the same thing, I drag it downwards.
Double tap to control center.
If I drag it halfway, like 2 inch or 5 cm, it will pull up the control center. Let's just move around the control center.
AirDrop. Wi-Fi. Bluetooth.
So there are like,
Open controls.
things like AirDrop, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth.
Media. Play. Preview. Play. Next. Lock rotation.
All these are the different shortcut things that we spoke about just now. I'm going to redo the gesture one more time so that you all can hear it again. So I'll just press the home button to go back home.
FaceTime.
So if you want to dismiss it, you'll just press the home button as well, or you can use the home two-state gesture. So let me do that two-state gesture to pull out control center again. Touch the top part and pull down.
Home. Control center. Airplane mode.
Okay, so this is control center. Now same thing, press the home button to get rid of it. Now if I want to go to notification center, it's the same two-state gesture, just you have to drag more, right? So instead of halfway, like a full thing now. So instead of 5 cm, could be about 10 cm. Same thing, put down, drag downwards.
Swipe up or down to select a notification center.
So this is the notification center. So
250
at the top of the notification center, there's the time, there's the date.
Tuesday.
Then
Notification.
it has all the different notifications.
Clear. Settings. 2 hours ago. Clear. Clear all notifications.
And then there could be a clear button here to kind of get rid of your notifications. So once you're done reading, just press the home button. So I'm going to
FaceTime.
quickly run over the other gesture. What you can do is just touch the top part of the iPad where it has all your time and your battery levels.
So that's called a
Swipe
status
up or
bar.
down to select a custom.
So that's the status bar. Touch the status bar.
Tuesday the 14th of June.
So as long as you read to you something at the time, if you do a 3-finger swipe up, you'll bring up the control center.
Control center. Airplane mode. Switch button.
So this is the control center. To dismiss it, same thing, press the home button. If I do a 3-finger swipe down, but I have to make sure that my voiceover focus is at the status bar.
2:56 p.m.
So read the timing. Then if I do a 3-finger swipe down, it'll be the notification center.
Notification center.
Here you go. So that's how you perform the two methods
2:57 p.m.
to pull out the control center and notification center.
Yep, so let's just do a very quick summary of the interface of iOS. Again, just to take note, this doesn't cover every single bit of the interface of iOS, but this covers the main stuff. So let's start from scratch again. If the device is asleep, we can press the sleep wake button or the power button to wake the device.
2:57 p.m.
At this point, will be placed on the lock screen. So if you guys remember from the previous episode, we actually talked about the lock screen and setting up your Touch ID, Face ID or PIN. If let's say you have that set up, you will need to enter your PIN or do your Touch ID or Face ID verification here. But right now we don't have that set up, so
2:58 p.m.
we can either do the swipe up gesture or the home button gesture, which is a home gesture basically to unlock the device.
2:58 p.m. FaceTime.
Okay, now we are placed on the home screen again.
2:58
Okay, so now
FaceTime.
we are on the home screen.
So just to reiterate, for example, if you have like PIN code or password, when you press the home button or when you do that two-state home gesture, the prompt will come up for you to type in your password or your PIN code.
Yep. So right now we are on the home screen. The home screen layout is such that the majority portion of it is actually the icons, as we have described, is in a grid form, multiple rows, multiple columns of apps. The top part of it, as Dallon has mentioned, is where the status bar is, where you can see your Wi-Fi status, your mobile data status, and also battery and time. So
Single A9XK.
okay, that's our Wi-Fi name.
76% battery power. Status bar item.
So that's the status bar. The main part of it, of course, is our home screen with
Calendar. Clock. Home.
our multiple apps. The bottom part of the home screen
a
is
dock.
the dock. Okay, so I think just now we heard about the dock. The dock is basically the portion of the home screen or the app switcher that does not change. So you can put your commonly used apps on the dock so that it's easier to access. Whether you're on page 1, page 2 or page 5 of the home screen, you can basically get access to the same apps on the dock because the dock does not change. Now, if we want to look at the apps that have been opened, we go to the app switcher. Okay, so we either do the swipe gesture as we have shared earlier, or do a double press of the home button if your iPad or iPhone has a home button.
App switcher. Settings. Active.
How do I close an app in the app switcher itself? Basically, you swipe to the app or you touch the app.
FaceTime. Active.
You do a 3-finger swipe up.
Swipe up with 3 fingers to close the app. Actions available. Settings. Active. Closing set.
Okay, so now I've closed the apps in the app switcher. 3-finger swipe up to close apps in the app switcher. Now, the next part of it is the control center / notification center gestures that we mentioned. Control center is basically to control certain aspects of your device, to turn on and off certain functions, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, to get access to some of the shortcuts like AirDrop, which is basically to send a file wirelessly to another Apple device, to control your media playback. So let's say you're listening to music or watching a video through different apps, that's where you can control the playback. You can adjust your brightness, adjust your volume, so on and so forth. The notification center is of course where your notifications will be located. When apps sends notification, it will all be stored, all be recorded in the notification center. Now, when you do that, how you activate that is through the gestures that Dallon has shared. The 2-stage gestures, or by touching the status bar and then do a 3-finger swipe up for control center, down for notification center. So the 2-stage gestures is like that.
Control center.
At the first stage is control center.
FaceTime.
Okay, now we're back at home.
Notification center.
Okay, the second stage is for the notification center. Or we can do this.
FaceTime. Single A9XK. 5G. 2 of 3 Wi-Fi bars. Status bar
Status
item.
bar item, right? Okay, so we're on the status
Swipe
bar.
down with
And we can do a 3-finger swipe up.
control center.
Control
Airplane
center.
mode. Switch button. Single A9XK.
3-finger swipe down.
Notification center.
So the focus for voiceover is very important. You must make sure that you are touching the right region, to make sure that the voiceover focus is in the correct position when you start the gesture.
For those of you who don't know what's a focus, just need to remember that whatever voiceover read, that is where it is focused on. So if it tells you something like Singtel A9XK Wi-Fi, 2 of 3 Wi-Fi bar, status bar item, you know that your voiceover is currently focused on your status bar, and then you can use the gesture.
Okay, so now we have gone through the main aspects of iOS user interface. Let's now take a look at the settings of iOS. So the settings can be opened by the settings app on the home screen. So let's now look for the settings app. There are 2 ways that you can go about that. The first one is of course to go to the home screen of your iPhone / iPad. The second one will be through Spotlight. So now let's just look for settings. Okay,
3
settings.
new items.
It should be at
Double
least
tap to open.
It should be at least at the first page of your home screen lah. So just in case if you cannot find it, you may just have to make sure that you're in the first page of your home screen.
Yup.
So how do you do that? Just press the home button and you'll jump there lah. And then you'll then be at the home page. It'll be at the first page of the home screen. We won't really go into the full main aspect of settings because
There are just too many things to cover, and not all of it may be relevant right now, so we'll just cover the main aspects of it. We'll just do a really quick browse through the first few items, which are usually the more prominent ones.
Settings. 3 new items. Settings.
Okay, the first few items that we'll see will be things like...
Apple ID suggestions. 2 updates available.
Okay, so you have
Button.
some Apple ID related settings at the top, so these are the recommended settings here.
Finish setting up your iPad. 1
Okay.
update available. Airplane mode. Off.
Airplane mode.
Double tap to toggle settings.
Actually, Hong Sen, before you jump right into it, I think we should let the user know that if you were to use an iPad versus an iPhone, iPad they will probably spread it out into there's 2 screens into one. So on your left side could be where you have all the settings, and on the right hand side you will see all the individual items within that particular category. Let's just say if we click on Wi-Fi, right? If you click on Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi. Single selected. Settings. Heading.
then all our Wi-Fi networks will be listed on the left hand side of the iPad.
Single A9XK. Other.
It's just good to know that for iPads they do this split screen thing, whereas for iPhone it's just all in one screen. Yeah, so if you do use the explore by touch method, you may realize this while you're hearing something differently.
Alright, so now we are in the Wi-Fi settings, which is of course to connect to Wi-Fi networks within the vicinity. So let's continue to look at what are the other options.
Airplane mode. Selected. Bluetooth. On. Button.
Okay, there's Bluetooth.
Notifications. Button.
Notifications is basically how notifications will be received, how they will be displayed. Okay, so you can explore this further on your end.
Sounds. Button.
Sounds is related to basically what sort of tones that the iPad or iPhone will play for different scenarios.
Like ringtones, message tones, and then here you can also set like the volumes of how loud you want your ringtone to sound. And for those who like to control their ringtone volumes using their volume buttons, there's a setting in there in sound that allow you to do that as well.
Do not disturb. Button.
Do not disturb is just an area where you can toggle on this mode to kind of make sure that you won't be disturbed, notification won't come in, and you can even block unnecessary call through this function. If you read out there in the internet, you could hear this term as a focus, because Apple recently introduced a couple of focus feature that allows you to create different do not disturb activity for different situations, like whether you're working, driving, or whatnot.
Yep.
Screen time. Button.
Screen time is something that we have seen previously. It is basically related to how much time you spend on your device. So it gives you a report. So within a week, how many hours do you spend on the device, on which app. They give you the stats in those areas.
General. Button.
General settings is actually quite relevant. So general settings is something that I think you probably would want to go in to take a look at the different options there. What happens here in general settings is that those commonly used aspects of the device, you will find them here. So we are talking about languages, keyboards,
Setting time, and like finding out more things about a device or software updates.
Yep.
Control center. Button.
Control center is of course related to
What we covered just now, and as I mentioned just now, we can add in more shortcuts, like you can add in things that controls maybe power saving mode
yes.
and more lah. Yeah.
Display and brightness. Button.
So display and brightness relates to your display settings, how bright you want to set your display as, font size, some other display related settings lah.
Yeah, like maybe you want your device in dark mode or light mode. This could be more for low vision users as well. There's I think this option where you can scale your phone. There are two different views. There's the standard, it's called standard, and then there's the more zoomed in version where your icons are bigger. So some low vision users may use things over here at this page.
Yep. Okay, so moving on.
Home screen and dock. Button.
Home screen and dock. Just one liner about it. It's just basically settings for your home screen and dock.
Accessibility. Button.
Accessibility, which is quite crucial, is where we have all our accessibility settings for different accessibility user groups. So we talk about, for vision,
We have things like zoom, invert colors,
voiceover,
and then for persons with hard of hearing, we have things like sound recognition and whatnot.
yep, and then also those who may have challenges with fine motor skills, there are some accessibility settings to cater to that area as well. So in fact, this is actually something that we would like to talk about today, accessibility settings. So let's go into this one.
Accessibility. Heading.
So bear in mind that we did not cover the entire settings app because there are really a lot of options to go through. That was just a really quick run through to let you guys know what is in there. Do feel free to explore further on your end. We might do a more in-depth coverage of that in the future. We will see how that goes, of course. But in the meantime, if there are any questions related to, say, configuration of your iPad, iPhone, any Apple device, just feel free to reach out to us as well.
I agree. So you can just drop it down in the comment section as well, and we will try to attend as soon as we can. Either we contact you directly or we will talk about it in future episodes of VICast.
Or VITEX sessions, depending on how that goes. Okay, so let's look at some of the accessibility settings. Okay, voiceover is
Magnifier. Zoom. Voiceover.
the first one.
On. Button.
Okay, let's go into voiceover.
Voiceover. Accessibility.
I just want to briefly talk about how you can set up, because now that this topic we focus quite a bit on voiceover, so we will just continue with that trend and just talk about how you can configure some of these settings.
Voiceover. Voiceover. On.
Okay, here is
Double
where
tap to toggle.
here is where you can turn on or off voiceover. So if you have someone who is excited to turn on voiceover on a Apple device, this is how you can do it. You can go to settings, accessibility, then voiceover, and switch it on. here.
Alternatively, if you have Siri enabled, you can just ask Siri to turn on voiceover.
Yep. Okay, so
Voiceover speaks items on the screen.
So this is just a description lah.
So that's literally what voiceover does, is
And
it
then-
speaks items on the screen.
Tap once to select an item.
So if you continue swiping down, it'll go
Double
through.
tap to activate the selected item.
It'll go through all the list of gestures,
That we have sort of covered lah,
Mm,
throughout this episode and the previous episode.
like a
Learn
basic.
more. Link.
Okay, you can learn more here.
Voiceover practice. Button.
Voiceover practice, basically you can practice your voiceover gestures in there.
Speaking rate. Heading.
Okay, I want to talk about this.
Speaking rate. 50%. Adjustable. Swipe up or down with one finger to adjust the value.
When you hear voiceover says adjustable, this means that you can swipe up or down with one finger to adjust its value it just read out. So let's say if I find that, oh, voiceover is speaking way too slow, I want to increase the speed, I'm going to swipe up.
60%. 70%.
Okay,
Speech. Button. Speaking rate. 70%. Adjustable.
okay, that's a
Swipe up
better
or down with
speed.
one finger to adjust the value.
Okay, maybe just now the speed was way too slow. This is better now, so I'm going to stick with this. Right. Or you might find that, hey, actually the 50% was already way too fast. Let me lower that down.
60%. 50%. 40%. 30%. Speech. Button. Braille. Button.
Okay, now it's slow.
Speaking rate. 30%.
Let's
Adjust.
Put it back to 50. Thanks.
50%.
okay, let's put this back to 50%, and now let's go on.
Speech. Button.
Speech is where you can set the different speech options for voiceover, such as the voice or the language that it speaks in. We will take a look at how to change the voice of voiceover. Before that, I just want to quickly swipe through. I'm not going to swipe through everything again, but just to show you guys what's in here.
Braille. Button.
Braille is for Braille input.
Braille input and connecting to Braille display. So Braille input is where you can do like a type in Braille on the touch screen, so it recognizes your fingering.
Voiceover recognition. Button.
So voiceover recognition is like an AI feature that kind of give you a little bit of idea of what the particular, let's say, image, and the image have some text. You will kind of try to recognize it and give you an idea of what this image is.
It provides a textual description basically, and also for websites that may not be accessible, it does provide you with some accessibility features, such as providing maybe a label for some buttons, so on and so forth. It's basically AI recognition for apps and web content.
Verbosity. Button.
Verbosity relates to how voiceover reads.
How much information it gives you as well in that sense.
Yes.
Audio. Button.
Audio relates to how voiceover outputs its audio, to which channel, to which device. So probably you don't really have to touch this unless you want to do some customization. Also, audio ducking is in there. So audio ducking is a feature whereby, say, when media is playing, voiceover will lower the volume of the media so that you can hear voiceover more clearly. Okay, I'm just going to quickly run through the rest. We won't really go into explanations for all of the other options, except for the more notable ones now.
Commands. Activities. Rotor. Button.
Okay, the rotor settings is where you can set the rotor gesture, which we haven't really talked about yet. But rotor gesture basically is where you can use a two-finger twisting gesture. So it's kind of like imagining you're turning a dial. You put two fingers on the screen and then you just imagine you're turning a dial clockwise or anti-clockwise. And that basically allows you to go through some of the other options, some of the other navigation options, like navigation by words, characters, headings. Basically, it's a more advanced mode of navigation. You can find out more about this online. There are lots of resources about this. You can maybe drop us a text or drop us a request to find out more about these aspects of navigations.
Rotor actions. Button. Typing. Button.
Typing is basically where you can set the different typing modes. So there are 3 typing modes for voiceover. There is standard typing, where on the keyboard you need to double tap on each letter to activate it. Then there is touch typing, where you touch a letter that you want and you lift your finger to activate the letter that you want or the character that you want. Then there is direct touch typing, whereby the way you activate the key is you just quickly touch and let go of the key. So it's a very quick touch and let go. So touch typing, what you can do is you can touch and slide your finger around to find the key that you want, then you lift your finger to input that character. But direct touch typing means that you have to touch and let go immediately. Alright, now let's return back to what we mentioned initially about changing voiceover's voice.
Braille. Button. Speech. Button. voice, voiceover, back,
So I went to speech, then I double tap, and now here we are.
speech, heading, voice, Daniel, button,
So you have Daniel. Daniel.
select speech,
So this voice that you're hearing right now is Daniel. Let's change that to something else that is a little bit higher quality.
Siri, button,
So over here you'll see all the different English voices. There's English Australia, English UK, English US,
Rishi, button,
English India.
English
I believe.
India, heading,
English India.
Siri, English Ireland, heading,
Okay, so there are many different dialects.
row 6 to 24,
locales.
download Ava, Fred, download
all this-
Alex, 869 megabytes,
So all
Button.
these are not downloaded by default. Like if you want a particular voice that let's say you are used to and it's not downloaded by default, it will show you that there's a download button there and you just have to double tap on it.
Yep. You guys can just play around with the different voices.
English US,
Okay.
heading,
English US.
Okay.
download Alex, 800,
I'm going to download Alex.
The AS version.
7% downloaded,
So while we are waiting for it to finish downloading, we can talk about I'm gonna go back.
speech, back button, speak, detect voiceover, add new language,
Okay, in the speech setting, instead of just changing the type of voice you want to use, over here you can also change the pitch of the voice and you can also add languages. I do it on my own sometimes. I add like say a Chinese language so that it will detect the right language. So VoiceOver has this feature that it will kind of automatically read out in that particular language if it detects it's Chinese, for example. But sometimes if it detects wrongly, then it will read out in some Japanese voice or you'll get like some Japanese words instead. If you add the language, you just have a higher chance of getting the language right lah. So I do add my language, like if I want Chinese Taiwan, that's where I'll add it. You can come to same thing, speech, and just look for add language.
add new language, button,
Add new language, yep. Okay, so I have moved back all the way to the page where it shows me all the different accessibility features.
vision, heading, voiceover,
So just now we briefly talked about voiceover. I just want to talk about another feature that low vision users use quite often is the zoom feature.
zoom,
So the zoom feature is like a magnifier on your screen. I won't go into detail how you use it. It's just like a magnifier on your screen and can magnify the text.
zoom,
I'm going to go into zoom now.
zoom, accessibility, back
And
button,
you'll notice that
zoom, double tap,
roughly at the top where the on toggle is, it will have some instruction to teach you how to use zoom as well. You can try it out and follow the instruction, and if you have any queries, feel free to just contact us.
accessibility,
We do cover this like to show you how the different feature work in our A2T session. So if you would like to know more, you can join us at the session and we are glad to be able to answer any of your queries then. So
zoom, magnifier,
below zoom, you have magnifier. Magnifier is just a tool that kind of use your camera as a magnifier. There's one important note to note. You may or may not see this setting in later versions of iOS or newer versions of iOS because they have kind of made this thing to become like an app and you should be able to find the app somewhere in the home screen or through Spotlight. But the features is still the same and probably a bit more improved.
display and text size,
There's this display and text size. It's a bit more detailed compared to the display settings. Over here you can configure the text size, configure how your font look, whether is it bold or high contrast or whatnot.
motion,
Okay, so the rest of the other accessibility features is more towards the mobility sort of things.
Let's now scroll to the bottom of the screen. So one of the last few items is either the last item or the second last item on the display, depending on your iOS version, is something called accessibility shortcut. Accessibility shortcut is basically setting a shortcut to start the accessibility feature that you would desire to use. So this could be voiceover, zoom, or anything else. How you would activate accessibility shortcut for devices with a home button, you press the home button 3 times. So 3 rapid presses of the home button. And for those devices without a home button, you press the power button or the sleep wake button 3 times. Depending on what you have set as an accessibility shortcut, would either activate or deactivate that particular function. If you have set more than one option, it will bring up a menu for you to select what are the features or what are the functions that you would like to enable. So let's say you set zoom and voiceover as both the features or the functions to start with accessibility shortcut. You can choose which one you want to use or both of them. Alright, so that's how you will go about setting up the shortcut to quickly enable or disable voiceover, zoom, or any of these features. And now let's return back to our speech settings to take a look at how our progress is going.
Rows 1 to 17
for
of 9. Voiceover. Download Alex button.
So now we hear Alex button. That means that the voice has already been downloaded. And if we were to just select this by doing a double tap.
English. Back button. Alex. Heading. Edit. English us. Alex. Using 869 megabytes.
Selected. Alex. Using 869 megabytes.
Notice that the voice have changed, and that just means we have selected Alex as our voice for voiceover.
You can choose a voice that you may prefer. There are lots of options. You can do a trial and error. You could try the Siri voices. Those are pretty high quality in nature. You may or may not like it. So again, just feel free to give it a try. A classic one, of course, is Daniel, as we heard earlier. That is the one that comes pre-installed. And also you can try Samantha, which is another one of the very classic older voices that some people do enjoy using.
Okay, so I think we really have come to our end of this podcast. We really hope that by recapping all these gestures, it helps you to kind of understand and have a good feel of how the iOS ecosystem is going to be like. And I'm glad to be able to share all this experience with you. I know this podcast is super long, but I really hope that this content does help you guys.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you next time. And just a reminder that we do have transcripts. If you want to access the transcripts of this podcast, you can find the link in the description. Feel free to like and subscribe if you like the content and if you'd like to keep up to date with whatever GDS uploads.
Yep.
And also our VICast podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in our next episode and also during one of
Screen
our
VITEX or A2T sessions that we do carry out throughout the year. Thank you and see you around.
Goodbye.